What words would we use to describe Patrick Bateman? Young, wealthy, handsome, emotionless, ambitious, killer. He is one of the most recognizable characters in film, and his legacy is still spoken about nearly 23 years after the film's release. Although the book was famous in its own right before the movie, Christian Bale's Patrick Bateman has become an icon for ruthless killers, Wall Street yuppies, and of course, us movie lovers. We want to dive in deeper into what made Bateman such an epic character, as well as discuss some themes about the film you haven't considered before. And at the end, we'll look into if Patrick Bateman is a true Sigma or if all the memes are just getting it wrong. This is If I Were a Villain. Alright, so why is Patrick such a special character? Patrick is the type of character that can hold the attention of an audience an entire movie, even though the plot is perhaps simple, to be honest. We dive into the intricacies of Patrick's life, watching him slowly deteriorate into madness. Movies like American Psycho or Taxi Drivers are movies that focus only on the main characters, with the plot taking the back seat. I'm not going to say that the main story isn't interesting at all, but what we are mainly watching is to see how Bateman lives inside the story rather than questioning how the greater story will unfold. When Patrick decides to break up with his girlfriend in public, as an audience, we don't really care so much about if they're going to stay together or what will happen to their relationship. We care more about what's going on inside Patrick's head and how her making a scene may affect his status or the way people perceive him. It goes back to one of Patrick Bateman's biggest faults, his narcissism. It is possible that Patrick may have inspired other fictional characters in literature, film, and television. The character of Bateman has become iconic in popular culture, and his depiction as a wealthy young investment banker who is also a psychopathic serial killer has been widely imitated and referenced in other works. For example, the character of Dexter Morgan in the TV show Dexter is often cited as being inspired by Bateman, as both characters are charming, successful professionals who also happen to be serial killers. Similarly, the character of Patrick Bateman in the stage adaptation of American Psycho has been compared to the character of Frank Underwood in the TV show House of Cards, both of whom are ruthless, amoral, and willing to do whatever it takes to get what they want. It is possible the character of Patrick Bateman from American Psycho may have inspired the character of Tyler Durden from the novel and film Fight Club, as both characters are complex, charismatic, and violent figures who challenge the values and conventions of their respective societies. Both characters are also portrayed as being deeply troubled and disturbed, with Bateman suffering from mental illness and Durden grappling with issues of identity and purpose. Both characters also use violence and aggression as a means of coping with their inner turmoil as a way of expressing their rebellion against the status quo. It is worth noting, however, that while these characters may have been influenced by or bear some similarities to Patrick Bateman, they are also distinct and complex characters in their own right and should not be reduced to simple copies or imitations of the character of Bateman. Sigma energy. We talked about this briefly in a different video, but we've been seeing a lot of talk on the internet about a Sigma personality. Also known as a lone wolf, a Sigma is a masculine personality type which describes someone who is popular and successful, but independent. I think why some people are currently attracted to this personality type, as it's in some ways seem as extremely humble. Sigmas don't brag about themselves and don't need other people's affection to feel good about themselves. In the modern age of social media and the need to present yourself in a specific way to the world, someone who doesn't care about looking cool or how many likes they get on a picture is often a very unique outlook. I also think a lone wolf doesn't really play by anyone else's rules. Being independent and sticking out in a way that is all your own is something I think a lot of people are looking for. I am in no way trying to bash all social media, but I think we are so used to seeing a lot of celebrities and influencers looking a certain way or being told that to be cool you need to act a certain way, that being devoid of all of that and not caring about people's approval is honestly cool as hell. On our Tyler Durden video, there was an interesting discussion in the comments where user Jay wrote, "I grew up watching Tyler Durden, you grew up watching Andrew Tate." I think this really relates to the discussion of Sigma and how many people are attracted to this personality type. Some people in the discussion view Tate in a kind of Sigma way, saying things like, as Andrew got rich, he realized he wanted freedom, not money. This is exactly what I'm talking about here, folks, that the reason we are so fascinated by Patrick Bateman is not because he's so rich and successful, but his motives are not what we think that they are. And that's why this lone wolf persona is the embodiment of personal freedom, one that doesn't need approval from others and is successful and independent in their own right. There was some disagreement in the discussion, as well as talking about masculinity. And just because Andrew Tate promotes himself as masculine and his ideologies are about being the best man possible, that sentiment falls flat. And when you talk about how manly you are, it comes off as corny. We've also been seeing Andrew Tate sort of getting a spiff online recently with Greta, a famed environmentalist, and his reaction to sort of her pushback, I'm not totally sure I could say it's the most Sigma of reaction.
Greenhouse gases.
Again, this goes back to this approval of the Sigma personality. They're capable of leadership, but don't seek it out, being the silent leader type and leading by example. But enough about Andrew Tate. This video is about Patrick Bateman. Does Patrick embody the Sigma persona? I would say absolutely, but also kind of in the worst ways possible. Although Bateman is extremely self-dependent, successful, and at times can be charming, he uses those tools as a means to get his selfish and narcissistic needs. On one hand, we can say, look at Bateman's ability to be cool and collected when he is mixed up with another coworker by Barry Allen. He could have been angry in the moment, stating he is absolutely not this other guy. But instead, he plays it off and creates a plan to get back at him later. He wears a mask of a normal guy in front of everyone so that behind the scenes, he can live out his true intentions. I guess in many ways, he is a Sigma, but not sure getting someone drunk and luring them into your house to kill them is a super chill thing to do. Hopefully, the future of the Sigma trend leans more into the self-aware, easy, independent mindset rather than the I'll be cool now, but curb stomp your dog on my walk home from work mindset. Okay, a little bit about the background of the film. American Psycho is from the year 2000, a psychological horror film directed by Mary Harron, starring Christian Bale as the main character, Patrick Bateman. The film is based on the 1991 novel of the same name by Bret Easton Ellis and follows the life of a wealthy young investment banker in New York City during the late 1980s. Bateman is a serial killer who murders people, mostly for his own pleasure, and the film explores his violent and depraved psyche. It also touches upon themes of materialism, corporate greed, and the emptiness of yuppie culture in the 1980s. The film was met with mixed reviews upon its release, but it's since gained a cult following. At the time, some critics found the film to be a clever and satirical commentary on yuppie culture and the emptiness of consumerism, while others found it to be disturbing and offensive. Patrick Bateman, the wealthy young investment banker in New York City, is the main reason why the critics were so divided. Bateman's preoccupation with his appearance and status is portrayed as absurd, but in the context of what's presented in the film as normal. From the first scene, we see the intense morning routine of Bateman, broken down to show every detail, with him narrating the exact methodology behind his madness. Later, we see Patrick's deathly jealousy of his friend's business cards. He is nearly suffering from seeing the texture and the font of his adversary's business cards. Let's face it, they are all equally bland. In general, you could see that all of the men in the film look exactly the same. Gelled back hair, gray or black suits, they smoke and drink whiskey. This is the Wall Street of the 80s, which, similar to what we saw in Jordan Belfort video, everyone has the same sharp businessman look. On the other hand, some reviewers were put off by the graphic violence and disturbing subject matter, while others felt that the film's dark humor and satirical elements were lost in the gore. The film's depiction of women as objects of male violence and desire also attracted criticism from some quarters. Bateman frequently objectifies and dehumanizes women, and the film contains several scenes in which he sexually assaults and murders them. Relative to the year 2000, which, by the way, was the year that the film was released, the sexual scenes there are quite extreme. The audience hears explicit material that is constantly playing in Patrick's apartment, which includes moans and screams that are heard throughout the soundtrack. Today, it may seem like a relatively subtle scene to us, but at the time, the scene was a graphic depiction of Wall Street mentality, treating women like objects and a thick layer of selfishness involved with everything they do. Finally, some people may have found the film's portrayal of mental illness to be offensive or insensitive. Bateman's mental state is a central theme of the film, and he is depicted as being clinically insane and lacking empathy. However, mental illness is a complex and nuanced issue, and some viewers may feel that the film does not do it justice to the complexity and diversity of experiences of people living with mental illness. Christian Bale even talks about his concern with the way people would see his portrayal of Patrick Bateman as a celebration of this personality type. In this 2022 GQ interview, Bale describes hanging out with some trading room Wall Street guys before the release of the film, and they were talking about how much they loved Patrick Bateman and how he was such a legend. Bale then asked, "But ironically, right?" And apparently the Wall Street guys didn't understand. This shows that many people's interpretation of the film may vary from the original intent of the creator, and even Bale himself questions how people are interpreting his portrayal of Bateman in general. That is it for this video. We have so many more thoughts about American Psycho, so please let us know if we didn't touch on something that you want us to explore, or that we forgot to include something about Patrick Bateman being a Sigma. Let us know. We want to hear it. Please write in the comments, and looking forward to it. Thanks so much. Please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.